Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi here on this Thursday night. Hope you're staying warm in this brutal frigid air mass that we have covering much of the east. And I have here tonight my colleague, meteorologist Joe Rayo. And for those of you who don't know Joe, he's been very prominent in Westchester and in the Hudson Valley. We work together. We've known each other for plus or minus what?
We don't want to even get that far. Well, more than a few decades.
We have 80 years of forecasting experience between us.
I'm starting to feel it right now.
Yes, we are.
Bones creaking in the cold weather. It is unbelievable. But you know what, Joe? It's a very funny thing. We're in the midst of, or in the throes of, probably one of the coldest air masses that we have seen in quite a few years here in the northeastern United States. But I did get a look at the overall global conditions. And we here in North America are the only ones who are going through this. Most everywhere else in the Eastern Hemisphere, in Europe, and in Asia, they're seeing temperatures that are at or above seasonal normals for this time of the year.
Well, somebody's got to be on the other side of the equation.
Yeah. But the thing is that what's interesting is that here's North America and here's the rest of the Northern Hemisphere. The rest of the Northern Hemisphere right now is really quite warm. We are the only ones. It's almost like all the frigidity that normally is lodged up over the North Pole or the polar regions has just dropped on down into our neck of the woods, and we're certainly feeling it
Sure.
these past few days.
Well, let me just say real fast, let's let everybody know, we are live, Joe and I want to just give quick highs to a few of you who got on early. Christopher Alley, my buddy, good to see you here, Pops, and I hope you're feeling well. David Fuller, Karina Rivera, Wayne S., saying hi to Joe and Joe. Scott Olson. These are a number of my regulars here that are on a nightly basis. James, NASCAR fan. Ian Simpson. So we are here, and we're doing dual weather tonight. May try and do this a bit more often. So let me bring up the let's bring up the temperatures and show you what's going on currently, because it is cold no matter how you slice it. You know, one of the things to me that was really remarkable today is that we had a day where temperatures in the New York City area and most places nearby did not even make 20.
Wow. And that hasn't happened too often in recent years. We were discussing, again, since we've been doing this for a long time, I was thinking back to late December. And there was one Christmas, I think, I'm 99% confident, it was the Christmas of 1980. The day before, I think temperatures were in the 30s. During the night, Christmas Eve night, we had a sharp polar air mass build in. And during the next day, Christmas Day 1980, it was brilliantly clear, bright and sunny, straight on through. But the temperature, I believe, at Central Park did not get any higher than 8 degrees.
Right, and I think it was down to 2 below that morning.
Right.
These are some of the numbers we're seeing right now. These are 6 p.m. Eastern time temperatures, and throughout much of New England, it's in the single digits, even a few below zero readings now popping up in northern New York State and northern Vermont and New Hampshire. And we'll move up over into the Midwest. Now, this is the first of two air masses, of two bitter cold air masses, so temperatures actually are going to moderate a bit back through the Great Lakes ahead of the next air mass. But when we say moderate, it's all relative. Right. I mean, look at these numbers. They're back up into the at least above 10. Chicago's at 14 right now. Milwaukee's at 10. Detroit is at 12. Much of Michigan, I remember last night at this time, was down below zero, so now they're up in the upper single numbers to around 10. And I got a message today from somebody in Minnesota to tell me that he was up to 10 degrees above zero.
And they were rejoicing, probably.
Yes. Now we start to get into some of the minuses again, up through northwestern North Dakota. We can't see the temperatures in Canada, but that's the next brutal air mass. And if you want warmth, you only have to go to Colorado, where it's in the mostly 30s and 40s. I don't know what spot this is. That's 61. I can't read the city behind it. I might be able to get a little.
That's a heck of a Chinook.
Yeah. Animas. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but that looks like a 61 there. And we'll go out west to make everybody feel better. and it's in the 70s across Arizona, 60s and 70s throughout much of Southern California. Now, we do have a spattering of winter storm warnings up for Montana and in through parts of Idaho tonight, and there you can start to see, basically east of the Rocky Mountains. Right. That's where the kind of the boundary of the bitter cold is.
The Continental Divide, and you could see in extreme southwestern Montana, 36 degrees. You go over the mountains and you're immediately, but that's only because it's a cold, shallow air mass, and you have to think of it as a bowl, so to speak, and you're pouring the cold air into the bowl, which is the middle and eastern sections of Montana and across the plain states. And if you think it's cold now, as Joe just alluded to, we're thinking that Monday and Tuesday may be the kind of situation where here in the tri-state area we'll be struggling to make it much above 10 or 15, and meanwhile you get on I-87 and go up toward Albany and points north of there on the Northway, and you may find temperatures all day long, Monday and Tuesday,
they're going to have
at
a real
or below
tough time.
Zero. It's really, you ain't seen nothing yet if you think this is cold.
Now, in the transition of these two brutally cold air masses, we're probably going to see some snow here in our neck of the woods anyway, around first across the lower portions of the Midwest, and then throughout eastern Pennsylvania and into New Jersey, probably down into the Delmarva Peninsula. I just want to show you, everybody, what the Weather Service is forecasting for. This is a minor event, an inch or two across much of the northern half of New Jersey, lower amounts to the south. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the lower amounts to the south. I think it might be a little bit more of a general 1 to 2 inches. And I'll pull up out my neck of the woods and your neck of the woods here. This is the Weather Service's forecast.
And the thing is also about this weekend, the snow on Saturday will be of the puffy talcum powder, low density type of snow. But one thing, Joe, that there really is not a fix on is the snow to rain ratio in very cold conditions. And I'll point this out to you that you mentioned that they think you should be seeing higher amounts in southern New Jersey. If you look at the excuse me, I'm suddenly losing my voice. If you look down at the technical discussions, the area forecast discussions that are put out by each Weather Service forecast office, the folks at the National Weather Service in Upton, our Weather Service out in eastern Long Island for the New York City area, is talking about snow ratios of 12 or possibly 15 to 1. Meanwhile, down in Philadelphia, they're looking at this and they're saying, hey, this could be a 20 to 1
It's
ratio.
very cold just above, just aloft.
Right, but what I'm saying is that nobody can get a real handle.
I agree with you. That's always a tough thing. You can just kind of make a general guess at it.
Yeah.
And I've been surprised in both directions with that. But we got, for Long Island, this is where it might touch coastal areas of Long Island, and I think maybe even coastal areas of Monmouth and Ocean County might wind up with a little bit more. So they're going 2 to 3. You can see an inch or less once you go north toward Route 84 and beyond, and up into Connecticut. As you get north of Route 15, the numbers start to go down.
Right.
But ratios are going to play a role here because if you wind up with 0.2 of an inch of liquid melted, and you got a 20 to 1 ratio, you're talking 4 inches.
Yeah.
Now, let me just want to maybe jump onto the comments board and see if. And we're already talking about Wednesday. All right, Garo Vestas, I'm just going to tell you that in just a little bit, I'm going to talk about Wednesday too and show you why you better not, run out and bet the bank on that happening yet, okay? Because there's other stuff going on, and I'll show you that in just a second. But we've got to just trying to make sure. Does there seem to be any additional questions? Yep. If you guys got questions for either of us, by all means, put them on the chat board here. Now let's jump ahead. So after the snow, whatever we get, and we'll go into Sunday and New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And one of the things that, at least for us, if we put down a couple of inches of snow, and assuming it doesn't get all either blown away or evaporated on Sunday, I think there's a fair chance that Monday morning there's going to be a large chunk of our area that's going to be waking up to temperatures below zero.
Right, no question. Monday and even Tuesday. And in fact, the low temperature, the record low temperature at Westchester Airport, HPN or White Plains, are definitely in jeopardy for Monday and Tuesday, I think, with low temperatures, record lows, those 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. I believe, off the top of my head now, I think it's 3 on Monday, 2 on Tuesday. The 3 was set back in 1962, and the 3 was set back in 1968. And those temperature records may be very well going bye-bye by Monday and Tuesday, because we're going to have the perfect conditions. We're going to have bitterly cold, Arctic, if not polar air dropping into our neck of the woods. And this snow cover, where's it going to go? Where I live right now, I still have, at least on the grass, I still have a good couple of inches of snow.
From leftover from Christmas Eve.
That's the Christmas Eve, Christmas morning storm. And that's not going to go anywhere. And now we're going to drop another inch or so on top of that. And with that radiational cooling, if the winds can die down,
that'll be key.
That's going to be the key.
Going to be key. These are the lows for Friday morning across the eastern basically the eastern 2/3 of the United States. You can see how far south the single digits are. They get into northern Kentucky, southern Illinois, the freezing line down into southern Georgia, just north of New Orleans. But the below zero temperatures, upstate New York, up northern New England. But then you're going to see this next finger of -10, -15 starting to punch into the Dakotas and Minnesota. That's the next, it looks like the next surge. So while I'll move them forward. We should be able to get over 20 tomorrow. And then on Saturday, here's our temperatures. You see how they just kind of pop up? That's that weather system coming through. So suddenly you've got 40s and 50s from the mid-Atlantic, except for Virginia South. But look at that brutal air that's coming down. -40, -43. This is Sunday morning. Temperatures 40 below zero across the eastern Dakotas. 30 below zero in Minnesota. I mean, this is really an amazingly cold air mass.
You know what you call this? The greenhouse defect.
Exactly. And now for Monday morning, which is going to be brutal, you've got that threat for below zero here, but look at that big push of -40s. And I'm using, by the way, the Canadian model here because the GFS model has not been especially good with some of these temperatures. The Canadian is really going off the wall with some of these lows in the -40 range in parts of Iowa and Nebraska. I couldn't even fathom that.
Well, it's what I mentioned a couple of days ago, not here on YouTube, but on Joe's Facebook page. We did a Facebook Live a couple of nights ago, and I think since the middle part of November, virtually the entire nation of Canada has been snow covered. They've had some thick snow cover, especially up in central and northern Canada. And you got to think now, that's where the cold air is emanating from, over that refrigerator, so to speak, that blanket of white. I mean, when the cold air finally worked its way into the United States, it had to be more than just cold. It is indeed reflecting the bitterly cold, the brutally cold weather that's been sitting over Canada now for many, many weeks. Finally here.
Yeah, it really is amazing. The extent of this air mass, and this is for Tuesday. They got -20 readings in Chicago. I mean, maybe the model's a little bit overdone on the cold, but then as we go into Wednesday and Thursday of next week, we do get rather strong moderation occurring because the models are creating another deep trough, and notice behind it another shot of very cold air coming into the Dakotas late next week, assuming that we do get some sort of storm development. And I want to talk about that because, a lot of, there's already been chatter. The chatter has just been amazing. And I'm going to show you here the European, which has this, this is for next Thursday, where it's got this wrapped up gale just east of New Jersey and another deep low center. It's like a double low center, another one southeast of Cape Cod. You follow the lines here. This is the upper air, so we've got this very, very deep trough here in the east. But, and this is a big but, I wouldn't, count my snowflakes here before they hatch.
Yeah, in fact, at the end of last week, I on my Facebook page, and any of you can go there, Joe Ray or Weather, I had actually put out a kind of a statement because there were already murmurings about this upcoming weekend event and how some of the models were saying this was going to be a monstrous or a really huge, tremendous snowfall. In fact, we were seeing last week at this time for this upcoming weekend crazy, ridiculous numbers.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just nonsense.
12 and 15 and 20 and 24, and you were pointing out the world's longest warm front.
Right, it was the 2,500-mile warm front, which we did talk about here with you folks on our YouTube channel here, and how ridiculous that was.
And that was a week ago.
And
look what we were going to end up with. We're going to end up with some snow, but certainly it's not going to be the monster, behemoth that was being indicated. And so here we are again, sitting just about a week or so before another potential monster storm, and so you got to start, questioning whether or not this is actually going to transpire, or whether or not this one is going to end up being, just a.
Well, one of the things that I've brought up many times over the last number of weeks is the fact that winter patterns, and I think you'll agree with me with this. When you figure out what that pattern is, it may not repeat exactly throughout much of the winter, but it does tend to rhyme, and you get to see weather systems kind of behaving in similar fashion each time. Now, here's what I will say with regards to what's going on and what may happen next week. Up until now, as for those of you that have, you're looking for these, some kind of snow event, and we've illustrated the problem quite a bit lately, is that we have this really just very powerful jet that runs from northern Canada and the Arctic straight down into the plains and then straight to the mid-Atlantic coast. And you and I have commented about the fact and discussed the fact that there's no room for anything here. The flow is just way too fast and too flat. Now, the models are, again, and I want to emphasize this, they're doing this again, and we don't know that it's real. It's trying to realign that northern jet by pulling part of it out, and then you see as we move through time into early next week, part of it rotates back and carves out this deep, monstrous trough. I'm going to tell you right now, there is no guarantee that northern jet is going to get out of the way. And if it doesn't get out of the way, it is just going to be basically cold and dry with weak systems. Am I not right?
Right, absolutely. And again, I used the analogy on Joe's Facebook page last week. Those of you who remember the pro wrestler Haystacks Calhoun, he was a 600-pound wrestler, and all he had to do to finish his opponent was just sit on them. And I commented last week that this massive wave of cold weather that was coming in kind of reminded me of the Haystacks Calhoun of the atmosphere. It would just come pouring in, and any attempt to bring in a major storm system into this bitterly cold, very cold and dense air mass might turn out to be futile. This particular storm on Saturday is just literally like squeezing out underneath this tremendous dome of cold air. Now we have another shot coming in behind it for Sunday into early next week, and the upper level winds, the jet stream winds. Who is to say that the next possible storm, which would be Wednesday night and Thursday, ends up the same way, just becomes overwhelmed to a degree by this massive push of cold air.
I think we have to, I'm at the point right now where until proven otherwise, that is what I think will probably, if you want to bet, if you want to lay odds, you have to go with the idea that the models may be way overzealous. And in fact, I will show you, I just remembered. Let me bring up the new GFS run. Now, the Canadian, the GFS, and the European were kind of on the same page earlier today with this upper trough. But remember, I said that we were saying here that if that northern jet does not get out of the way, it's going to, you're going to, all of this is nonsense. And I want to pull up the late run of the GFS, and I also want to get rid of us here for 1 second. Let me bring that to the top. So here's the, we'll let it load. Now I want you to remember what I just showed you with the European and how the deep trough gets carved out. Well, we've got the GFS now late this afternoon illustrating exactly what I've said with regards to the fact that you are not going to be able to get this jet to get out of the way. And you can see it here. This is, I've jumped over to Monday night. you still have, basically this strong northwest flow. The upper low that's in the east kind of pulls out between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, but it's not. You'd like to see the whole thing out at Newfoundland if you're looking for snow, but you can notice that it's stretched back to Nova Scotia and Maine. So now when we rotate that energy around, it's not out of the way. So the trough actually winds up lining up near the coast. So if this is right, you'll wind up with a monster storm out near Bermuda and moving up to the northeast. And that's exactly what the model did. It produced a deep, intense storm, but it has it out near 60 west. This is a big question. And I think you're going to have to really prove it to me that the northern part of that jet stream, which has been so dominant and so stubborn, you're going to have to prove it to me that it's going to get out of the way. I'm not at all sold that it's going to.
I really don't. The way this winter has gone so far, I really would say that you'd have to wait until 3 days or so before the event, before things start coming really into focus. That is where all of the data that we put into the supercomputers, the various supercomputers, they have a better chance of working on this and being able to model the atmosphere a lot better. Because right now, what we talk about something that's like 7 days, 6 days away. And so what scanty data that is available to these models, they're just, integrating that and taking their best guess.
Right.
And as you just said, without that movement of the northern stream jet, we're just gonna end up in the same boat.
You're absolutely correct. Nick Cortese, thank you for hitting Super Chat. That's going to get Joe and I each a cup of coffee at Starbucks tonight to stay warm, or at very least a hot chocolate. Thank you very much, Nick. Appreciate your generosity. That northern jet is just, that's a big issue. The other thing is, I kind of think if it does get out of the way, maybe it doesn't get completely out of the way, but maybe it gets out of the way enough that we wind up with perhaps a moderate event of some kind. But it might also open the door for later on in the month, where we start to get, where it will increase the amount of activity that's going to be able to hold together as it makes it to the East Coast. I think that's also a reasonable possibility.
And there is a difference, because this system that we're looking at for Saturday is being spawned by, and we've seen this, God knows how, I wish I had a dollar for every time we saw it over the last 20, 30 years or whatever. It's your standard Alberta clipper. It is coming in, it is weakening, it throws its energy to a new system off the mid-Atlantic coast. But the system that is being promoted for Wednesday night and Thursday is different in that it starts somewhere off the southeast coast and kind of moves almost straight north and intensifies. It's not the same type of scenario that what we're looking at right now. So there is some difference or differences in what we're looking at this weekend versus what may come on Thursday. But the bottom line of it is, if there's too much cold air, it's just not going to, in fact, I said last week also, this kind of reminds me of this pattern of the winter of 72, 73, where the cold was so predominant and so many storms passed right underneath us or just barely missed the tri-state area. We only ended up with about 3.5 inches that whole winter season. Now we're already well ahead of that, but still, if you're looking for a winter where we're going to get walloped with a massive 1 to 2 footer,
right?
This pattern doesn't, in my mind, seem to be the right pattern.
No, and it does seem, at least for now, it seems nickel and dime-ish. You're going to have to nickel and dime type systems. We do have a. Nick gave us another hit on the super chat, so we could probably get the large size hot chocolate piece. Thank you. Nick asked a question. And he says that he hears that. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I have this on? Just a second. No, mine is yours. Okay.
I'll turn it on.
Nick asked the question. He says he heard. Oh, and David Schwartz, thank you very much. So now we can not only get the hot chocolates, but we can get each an oatmeal cookie. Thank you very much. Okay, so what Nick is referring to about this, supposed warm-up, let me, one thing about, with social media and everything else, all sorts of rumors get spread. So let me show you what this is referring to. If you go on Tropical Tidbits, you can actually pull up some of the climate models, which I'm just such a huge fan of, and I say that in the most loving, sarcastic way. But this was one of the climate models. And I'm just going to go to the temperature anomalies.
You may never know. Mr. Levy may be watching right now.
No. Well, no, Levi, Levi the best.
Yeah.
Absolutely the best. Okay, so let me see. What is the issue here? The image is not available. Okay, so let's try something else. Oh, maybe we'll do the 7-day temperature anomaly. Oh, no, that's the precip anomaly. All right, everybody kind of bear with me here. I'm trying. Let me go back. Maybe I'll go back one run.
You know, what I would also say is that you could have the same kind of flow for a number of weeks ahead. But in my thoughts are that we are literally emptying out the Arctic or polar regions until we're going to exhaust all the really frigid cold air.
Right.
And it would just have to warm up just as a matter of, even though the flow is the same, it would have to warm up simply because there's nothing left to tap.
Well, yeah, and then the atmosphere does do that. Certainly, it might suggest that these extremely cold air masses we may have to take a break from. It doesn't necessarily mean that we'll go above normal, but we might kind of gravitate more toward the middle.
Right.
But what he's referring to is the fact that this model, and I saw this a couple of days ago, where it started to warm things up starting from the second week of January and lasting right into the month of March. Okay, so let's just see. This thing comes out twice a day. So this is through December. I'm sorry. This is through January 11th. So from the 4th to from the night of the 3rd to the night of the 10th. So let's just we'll move it over a day. So from the 4th to the 11th, much of the east below normal. You can see where all the above normal is up in Canada and in the west. And then, of course, the model has from the 11th to the 18th, everywhere east of the continental divide above average, okay, in temperatures. And then it kind of mitigates a little bit for the third week, and then we go into February. This is the last week of January into February, much above average out east of the Rockies. Okay, I will tell you this. Until I see the pattern breaking down, I'm not going to buy. I'm not going to believe it. Usually in the past winters, sometimes when you get in these patterns, they can last for weeks at a time. Models become these climate models can be really unstable, and you know what? This is one climate model that everybody's looking to. There's these Euro weeklies that they have now that go out to 5,000 hours into the future or whatever it is. I mean, it just gets silly after a while.
Well, I can remember back 20, 30 years ago, we used to refer to the, progs beyond, let's say, 5 or 7 days as the science fiction prog, because back then, especially back then, you see a big storm or a massive cold outbreak 7 or 8 or 10 days away. Instead of getting excited, you say, "Well, as you just said, let's see it. We're from Missouri. We want
right. Prove it to us.
Prove it to us." And it always turned out that the storm or the big cold blast never did materialize after a number of days.
Joe Arabia, my pal from the Patchogue Fire Department, that gets me a cigar. It'll get you. You get a sandwich for you because you're not the cigar guy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nick. Really appreciate it too. So that's a sandwich for me as well. Thanks for hitting super chat, guys. It's very generous of all of you. I just want to
remind you that just getting off back to the
topic
subject about the topic is that hellacious December that we had in 1989. Where it was bitter cold. In fact, I think at Central Park, the average temperature for that month was something like 25 degrees.
I believe that was like maybe in the top 5 coldest Decembers.
Right.
It might have been number 2 or number 3.
And everybody, by the end of that month, everybody was saying, like, my God, this winter is going to be a hellacious winter. And what happened? As soon as we crossed over into January, it warmed up very rapidly, and the rest of the winter, January, February, March, turned out to be above normal.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's going to happen again this go-around coming up. In the weeks and months to come, but it is possible to flip-flop and do a big flip-flop after. But it's been so very cold even from the beginning of December.
All right, Garo Vestas doesn't want me to forget everybody. Yes, a big shout out to you, Garo. Appreciate you being here. It's hard sometimes. We've got a lot of folks on board. I'm trying to go through the comments, but thank you very much for being here. Let's see. 99 wolves. Joe should get his magic wand and make it snow 50 inches in Chicago. Well, you know, we got to get these weather systems. You should get something from that system that's coming east on Friday, probably passing along the lower portions of the Midwest. But we still, you know, there's no sign of anything big happening anytime soon. Bob Apple says the odds favor what we have. It will be a cold and dry. That it'll be cold and dry. Before computers, they used to have the forecast when Grandpa said cold and dry. It was cold and dry, and driving a cab. Well, you know what? I will. You know, I certainly, Bob. I would say to you this. I've said this a number of times. There's no rule that says that it has to be cold and snowy, and that it can very well be cold and dry. And yeah, that's what it looks like at the moment. We don't have systems coming in off California. The Pacific moisture jet is cut off. Right. The Gulf of Mexico is cut off. The Atlantic is cut off. So what we have then is just weak weather systems coming down with not much moisture to work with. And you know, unless that northern jet stream pattern can realign itself in a slightly different way, you're not going to be able to get any kind of big snows of consequence. I don't think you would disagree with me on that.
No, I'm not going to disagree whatsoever. I'm just trying to see these comments coming in here, and I know you said something about smoking a cigar or whatever. But
oh yes, well the guys all know me. The guys and gals all know me from here. Franklin Taylor, who watches us from Arkansas, says it's predicted to stay below freezing about all of the next week, 24/7 in northern Arkansas. So that indicates storms will mostly keep hugging the Gulf Coast if they develop at all. Franklin, in fact, you know what? What's really funny is that remember that 2,500 mile warm front that the model had? Well, we're coming into that time frame now for it, and it's so, this cold air is so suppressed that you may not even be able to get a wave near the Gulf Coast. It may wind up being deep down into the Gulf of Mexico. That's how far south this jet is and how far south this northern push is. You just don't have you don't have the frontal. Normally the frontal zone would set up across the Gulf states. This is pushed so far south that you might not even be able to get, you know, moisture up into the southern part of the Gulf states out of this.
You just have to hope, if you're a snow lover, that come Saturday afternoon and evening, as that transfer of energy from the initial wave out of the Midwest, as that secondary system develops, that and the Atlantic Ocean is still rather warm, especially over the Gulf Stream. If you get it just right, you can probably get a sudden rapid intensification. But again, that intensification may be a little bit too far east for most of our viewers who want snow, except maybe for Cape Cod or eastern sections of Long Island.
Raymond from Albany, who's one of my regulars, although he's more into the severe weather, so he's been kind of quiet lately. He wants Albany to have a minus 40 wind chill. Okay, or will that be up in the Adirondacks? Sunday, it is going to get very windy, and we are going to see you're going to see temperatures, you know, falling. When you get minus 40 wind chills, do you really want minus 40 wind chills? You know, I experienced that once a couple of years ago when I went up to New Hampshire and Lake Winnipesaukee, where it was 15 below zero with a screaming 25-mile-an-hour wind. I'm not doing that again. Okay, so I don't know why you would want to experience the minus 40 wind chill. I was happy enough to experience the minus 15, but I'm not doing it again. It's very, very hard to take when it's that cold.
I was once in a minus 30 wind chill situation at my former employer, the former news gathering organization that I used to work for, and for whatever reason, I don't understand this. They'd like to put their weathercasters outside during extreme weather. Instead of being inside, looking at the latest data and conveying that to our viewers, they like to put people outside. Now, in this particular situation, I think it was about 5 or 8 years ago, my cameraman and I were outside in 30 below wind chills, and I'm saying to myself, why am I out here? But it was just absolutely horrendous. And just like you at Lake Winnipesaukee that time, I do not want to be out in that.
Right.
I'd like to ask the person who asked the question. He wants to see 40 below wind chill in Albany. Does he intend to be in Albany and be outside?
Oh yeah, no, he's there. He's waiting. I know he revels. He's waiting. I stink at Obies. I don't know what Obies are, but he says, "Do I remember the storm around mid-March, which the Weather Channel was hyping up, and that turned out to be a bust?" Well, I stink at Obies. If you're referring to the storm that I'm thinking you're referring to, the only place that was really a bust, if you want to, let's call it a bust, was for the immediate coast, because from just the northern areas of New York City and points north and northwest of there and northeast of there, it was not a bust. But it does bring up a point, because I already have had people tell me that off their weather apps already putting down, talking about Wednesday potential snows with accumulation amounts. It's nonsense, okay? You can't do it with any kind of accuracy this far out, and these are computer model generated apps. They're basically, I don't want to use, I want to call the apps dummies, not the people who have them. Don't misunderstand me. But the apps are dummy apps in the sense that there's no human tailoring the forecast.
Right.
It's automated, generated by either the GFS, or if they can pay enough money for it, they can get an app that's generated by the European. Whatever the model spits out is what it's going to put. And if you're getting a new model run every 6 hours, especially in the long range, you're going to have a different forecast. Right. What good is it?
Right. There are some forecasters here in the New York area who will go nameless, who they show you the European forecast for snow for a storm that's still 5 days out. They show you the numbers. Well, here's what we think right now. This is what the European model is saying for the storm that's coming up next. And I look at this, I shake my head. I said, why is he doing that?
Yeah. Joseph Arabia wants any win New Year's Eve for Patchogue, as we have fireworks at 9 p.m. and the ball drop. I think that is possible. That's going to happen. It is going to be windy. I'm thinking you probably will have gusts into the 20s and 30s.
Yeah, 20 and 30 miles an hour. Who's going to show up at the Giant game on Sunday?
Joe's going to be on the Jumbotron.
I'm going to be on the Jumbotron.
And by the way, the Giants' only home win this year was the day I did the Jumbotron. I only did it that one day. They won the game. They didn't win a single home game since. Okay, so I think there's a coincidence here.
Well, maybe if they win on Sunday, it'll be the Joe factor or whatever.
Yes.
Maybe they'll pay us to do all the Jumbotron forecasts next year or next season.
Sure. Sean K, thank you very much for hitting Super Chat. Really, we really appreciate it. Garrow wants to know. He says he agrees with us with respect to the apps and in the different forecasts. Yeah, they should figure out a way. Or maybe they don't want to figure out a way. I don't know, but maybe they should figure out a way to at least tailor, temper some of this stuff, because I don't think it's very useful for somebody to use an app that has a forecast 7 days out in order to make an intelligent decision about one thing or another.
In fact, that gentleman who mentioned the March storm where there was predicted Armageddon and we got very little, at least where he was. I think if that was the storm I'm thinking of, there was a person down in Philadelphia who actually broke into a network primetime show to tell everybody, this is like 5 days or 6 days out, that the storm of the century was coming.
Oh yeah,
and it was, believe me, it was not the storm of the century, but it just goes to show you, you start playing around with these models 5 and 6 days out, and, buying into what they're saying 5 and 6 days out. It's absurd. It's ridiculous.
99 Wolf said, don't worry, because the Cleveland Browns are worse than the Giants. There's always been an ongoing thing in New York with the Giants and the Jets that we used to always say, no matter how bad the Giants were, there was always the Jets. Yeah. It could be worse. It could be the Jets. They're not that too far apart this year, but it was not a good year.
Yeah, but the Jets were supposed to have the season the Giants are having.
Right, and the Giants were supposed to have.
The Giants were 11-5 last year.
I know.
Talking about playoff possibilities, but why are we talking about football? I do want to say one thing. In all of my years, and not even including being a professional forecaster or whatever, but in all my years, the one thing I've always wanted to see and has yet to happen is, and we've had this during Christmas, on the Christmas holiday, we've never had a massive snowstorm coincide with the ball drop.
Right. That hasn't happened, and it's not going to happen this year.
It's not going to happen this year, but still, I'm waiting. I'm wondering if that's ever going to happen in my lifetime just to see who would show up in 30-mile, 40-mile-an-hour winds with moderate to heavy snow and already like a half a foot or something like that. How many people would show up at Times Square for a scenario like that? You'd be surprised.
Nick, once with respect to my opinion about the long range with those long range models, as I showed you before, I'm not a long range guy, and I've stated this a number of times. I have a very difficult time getting my head around what the atmosphere is going to do in the next week to 10 days, let alone in the next 5 to 6 weeks. My view is that the pattern is going to be tough to break down, and it's going to last a lot. It may last longer than those climate models say. I don't know that they, I'm not sure why you're looking so far ahead when we still have what's going on now and all of next week. So I think, for those of you who kind of get into the long range, I'm at a loss to understand it because I'm trying to enjoy the short range. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Enjoy what's in front of you, and let the long range will take care of itself when you get there. Right now, I don't see any sign of any major pattern breakdown, although I think temperatures can't be coming at this extreme on a regular basis. But for certainly all of next week and maybe a bit beyond it, to me, it looks like we're going to continue with this, below normal temperature pattern.
The crazy analogy just came to mind with the Christmas holiday just behind us. It's sort of like the kids are running down the stair. They see the Christmas tree. They see the beautiful a bike that's in front of them right now, in front of the Christmas tree. And instead of going for the bike and saying, "Oh, look at this," look at that, they push the bike away and they say, "Let me go for the package that's underneath the tree. I want to see what's in this package." This is how it is right now, I think, with all of you people who are just jumping to Thursday of next and beyond. Enjoy what you got.
If you like this, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I could like this for too long. But if you like the cold weather, this is what you got. We
love this. Like, remember 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we would be in our element right now.
Right.
We're not that right now.
Our bodies have caught up with that. It's the kind of shouting, 70 might be nice, maybe 80 with a pool, works for me. But Jason Smalards, how can you enjoy freezing your butt off? You make a very valid point. All right, folks, we're going to have to call it a day because we're coming up on the top of the hour here, and we both have stuff to do. Thanks very much for being here. We'll see if we can get Joe on from time to time, and it's nice because you help me spice these weathercasts up just a little bit. And I hope everybody out there enjoyed it. And who knows, maybe I'll be able to pepper this with a few other guests along the way. Latest website posts on meteorologistjoechaffee.com. My buddy Angry Ben's got New York City taken care of on nycweathernow.com. And if you're new to the channel, thank you, by the way. I passed the 5,000 subscriber mark.
Fantastic. Congratulations to you.
Thank you. And let's try to get to 10,000 next. Thank you to all of you. My channel would not be anything if it were not for the audience, and I really appreciate it. So if you are new tonight, welcome aboard. Hit the subscribe button. It's absolutely free. You get notified when I do live streams, which is at least once a day, and in storm situations, it could be twice a day. All right, folks, we'll see you tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern Time.
Well, you'll see him.
You'll see me.
I'm not here tomorrow.
Okay.